In the African culture, before the invasion of colonialists, wives were not taking on the last name of their husbands. My name is Dr. Z, and you are welcome to another interesting episode of The Talk with Dr. Z. I will be right back. In this week's episode, I am going to talk about the trending wedding of Nigerian billionaire's daughter, Temiotedola, and popular and successful musician, Mr. Eazi. And I'm going to highlight some of the things that I have been seeing on social media, specifically from African men. So the first point is about the name change. Temiotedola, who is the daughter of a well-known billionaire in Nigeria, changed her name to Ajibade, which is the last name of her husband, Mr. Eazi. And African men are on social media saying that, have you seen, that is the daughter of a billionaire and she got married and she changed her name. But the average African woman is not so keen on changing her name when she gets married. So I am going to situate this concept of taking on your husband's last name within the historical trajectories of the African culture. Prior to the coming of colonialists to Africa, African women were not traditionally required to take on the last name of their husbands. Even the concept of last names were not a thing in the African culture. Okay, so prior to the coming of Europeans to Africa, there was no concept of last names, and wives were not required to take on the last name of their husbands. That is because in the African culture, marriage was between two families. Okay, marriage was between two families, and so the wives were still able to retain their family's identity, which is the name that their family gave them. However, when colonialists came to Africa, they brought their Eurocentric culture. In the European culture, at the point of marriage, which is during the wedding, the wife exchanges the authority of her father for the authority of her husband. That is the reason why there was the name change. And also, without the name of a man attached to you as a woman, women had limited opportunities during the European era at the time. So in the European culture, during the wedding ceremony, when they say who gives this woman to this man, it is often the father. And at that point, it meant that the wife was exchanging the authority of her father for that of her husband. Also, Europeans had things like registry, record keeping, Christian names, and surnames. And these are some of the cultural invasions that happened in the African context when colonialists came to Africa to colonize us, because our tradition is oral tradition. And so because Europeans kept records and had registries and this concept of Christian names, these are some of the influences that infiltrated into the African culture to bring about the concept of surnames. What is my point? If we are tracing it historically, wives were not traditionally required to take on the last names of their husbands. For me, the baffling part is the fact that all these African men who have no powerful surnames are busy on social media saying that, yes, if you get married and you don't want to change your name to take on your husband's last name, you are not submissive. I don't even get it. What has that got to do with submission? First of all, we need to emphasize the fact that Temi Otedola is an Otedola. Although she has changed her name from Otedola to her husband's last name, which I think is Ajibade, at the end of the day, Temi Otedola is still an Otedola. That name is so powerful, a name change would not influence her opportunities and the things she's able to do. And that is what we call legacy. When you come from legacy, it doesn't matter when you get married and you change your name. You will still have access to power, privilege, and everything you were getting before. So a name change does not impact Temiotedola in a negative way. However, the average man does not have a powerful last name. So I am not sure why average men are busy on social media, throwing tantrums and talking about submission. I do not get it. Instead of African men to be focusing on how can I build my last name so that when I get married, a woman would be more enticed to change her name. No, they are rather talking about submission. Personally, I have done a video on this topic several years ago, and I said if I get married, I'm not going to change my name. The only time I am going to change my last name when I get married is when my husband has a more powerful name, and changing to my husband's last name will accord me economic capital, social capital, and cultural capital. If I am not benefiting any of those three, I am not changing my name because I am not your father's daughter. I am my father's daughter, and in the African culture, traditionally, it was important for wives or women to retain their family name. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comment section with me. Now let us talk about Temiotedola's wedding gown and the concept of modesty that is also being touted by African men on social media. So this is her gown, and a lot of African men are like, have you seen? That is the daughter of a rich man, and her wedding gown is modest. She was all covered up. But most of you average African women, when you're getting married, your boobs are all over the place. You do not cover yourself and preserve yourself for your husband. First of all, it is important for the average African to understand that this wedding was planned based on a theme, and the theme was vintage. And according to news I have heard on TikTok, Temi's wedding gown was inspired by the concept of a floating marble, and it was designed by Fendi, I think. And so my point is, the entire wedding had a theme. And that is the reason why her wedding gown looked very conservative. And I think timeless too, because such a look, I think, will go beyond the bounds of time. And looking at the wedding pictures years from now, it will always be classic. And I think that represents Temi, because I do not follow her on social media, but I do see a lot of her videos on TikTok because I engage with her content. And so once you engage with her content, you would see the same person pop up on your For You page on TikTok. This concept of African men criticizing African women who tend to wear more mainstream wedding gowns that are more revealing, I do not understand it. And the men that are complaining and putting down African women who wear mainstream wedding gowns that are more revealing do not understand that they are undermining and disrespecting the husbands and the grooms of these brides that they are talking about. Because if a bride chooses to show her cleavage, that is because her husband likes it. However, most African men are busy on social media demeaning African women who wear mainstream wedding gowns that are revealing. Like, I do not understand it. And these men don't understand that any man who is invested in body policing how women present themselves, that is a weak man. African men are not focused on how they can accumulate cultural capital, social capital, global capital, political capital, and be relevant. Most of them are busy bringing down women. Also, we need to understand the fact that Temiotedola has a model physique. She's petite and tall. She has a model physique. So even if she wore the mainstream type of wedding gown, she will still look modest and classy because she does not have pronounced features like big boobs and big ass and not curvy. Her body is like a model type of body. So these are factors to consider, that different bodies will look differently in different gowns. But as usual, most men, they would take an opportunity to bring down women and demean women simply because of their weak ego and their weak masculinity. So for all the African men that were busy body shaming and demeaning women who wear mainstream wedding gowns, just understand that you are not only disrespecting the bride, but you are also disrespecting the grooms, that their wives are all over the place showing excessive body during an important occasion like their wedding. Another point I would like to raise is the fact that I saw some African men talking about, have you seen how Mr. Eazi married from his class? He married an equally successful woman from a good or a wealthy family. And so I saw some African men advocating, saying that, yes, as an African man, you should marry your class. Stop marrying women who are poor, and then you take on the responsibility of providing for them and also supporting their family. The truth is that the average African and average people more globally do not understand that marriage is an economic contract. Wealthy people understand that concept, that marriage is an economic contract. So you will see people from very wealthy backgrounds marry from their class. However, the average person has been sold the concept of love. And I am not saying that men marry for love. Men do not marry for love. Most average men marry for their ego and they marry for their penis. What do I mean by that? The average man, if he is financially stable, will go for a woman with a certain look to boost his ego. Average men marry for their ego, they marry for the validation of other men, and they marry for their penis. They are likely to go for a woman, especially Nigerian men or African men. They are likely to go for a woman who is light-skinned, who has big ass and big boobs and well curved. It doesn't matter her family background or her socio-economic status. That is the mindset of the average man. And so when I saw videos of some Nigerian men on TikTok talking about, oh, let us learn from Mr. Eazi, and if you want to go and get married, marry a woman from your own social class. It is a joke and it is funny because the average man does not have the mindset that marriage is an economic contract. The average man marries for his ego, for the validation of other men, and also for his penis. He marries the woman that is beautiful, that he's sexually attracted to, that he can use to seek validation from his friends, his male friends, and you're gonna go like, damn, your wife is pretty or your girlfriend is pretty. That is what the average man is looking for. The average man does not have the mindset of posterity, of legacy, and how to protect their legacy. The average man does not have a legacy, but wealthy people have legacy. And so they protect their legacy by marrying from their own class and marrying people from similar family background. That is the truth. So when I saw that comparison and they were like, yeah, let us learn from Mr. Eazi. Stop marrying broke women with big ass. Marry women from your social status. Most men would not be attracted to a woman who is on their same level in terms of social status and income. They would not. So that point was not even relevant. Finally, another aspect of this wedding that is trending was the message that Temiotedola's father, Femi Otedola, gave to the couple. In his wedding speech, he told his daughter that she must succumb to her husband's caprices and whims, and that her husband is her boss. And that got the internet riled up. I say this all the time on my TikTok page. All men are patriarchal and all men uphold patriarchy consciously or unconsciously. Was I surprised by what Femi Otedola said? No. He is a man. He's a Nigerian man. Believe you me. He is patriarchal and he upholds patriarchy. This is what I have to say to women. Dear women, we cannot escape patriarchy. As a woman, you would experience patriarchy at the systemic level. If you choose to be with a man, then you would experience patriarchy at the intimate level. For me, the only time it is smart to endure patriarchy at the intimate and the personal level is when you are marrying a man or into a family where your lifestyle will upgrade, your finances will upgrade, and your social status will upgrade. That is the only time it makes sense. So as a woman, when you marry a man and you marry into a family where you would have an increase in your social status, your cultural capital, and your economic capital, then it makes sense. Because at the end of the day, as women, we cannot escape patriarchy. Patriarchy is the foundation of all the institutions that regulate human society. And these institutions include the political institution, religious institution, education, economy, health. These institutions are premised on patriarchal ideas. They were designed by men for men. So you cannot escape patriarchy as a woman. However, if you choose to endure patriarchy at the intimate level through marriage or relationship with men, I would say that go for a man that can improve your life in terms of your lifestyle, your finances, and your social status, and use that to overall upgrade your life. That is the only time it makes sense. But if you're going to endure patriarchy at the intimate level and you have to deal with an average man who is not increasing your social class, increasing your finances, and upgrading your life, I am just saying it does not make sense. What are your thoughts about all the things I've said? Share them in the comment section with me. And thank you so much for spending your time with me. We wish Temi Otedola and Mr. Eazi a wonderful matrimonial journey. And we pray that their marriage remains happy and blissful. This brings me to an end of this week's episode. I will see you on the next. Do take care, and if you have not yet subscribed, consider hitting the subscription button. I will see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye.